of how many times you've been married, if you're thinking about remarrying, you've got to ask questions, the hard questions, to see if you're compatible, just like you just said you did.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 F's for sex are feelings. In other words, what are you really feeling? To you, what is sex?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, is sex something that's just going to happen naturally? Is sex something that we are going to have to work on? We're going to have adventure. We're going to have risk. What is it? And that really needs to be discussed. The second one is frequency. How often are you expecting to have it? I mean, really, you have to have these discussions. And then the third one is fantasy. And you have to discuss what each other's fantasies are in order to have a really fulfilling sexual relationship at any age, but particularly when you get older.
Sure.
Because most of my clients, who we call them the gray or silver divorces that came in, the reason why they were leaving their relationship was because they're like facing the mortality and they want to have a vivid and vibrant sex life.
Mm-hmm.
And if the partner isn't interested in that, then that's really a no-go at that stage of life.
Yeah.
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently, other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
This is Orr's, the official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. And, well, sometimes part of that kick-ass life, involves maybe a divorce and maybe getting married again. I'm sure many people find themselves in that situation. And today I have with me a special guest, Nancy Perpall, and she's a former critical care nurse who used conflict resolution to get her patients the best care. As a practicing divorce attorney for the last 30 years, she's used conflict resolution to get her clients the best results. As a former chair of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's Domestic Relations Rules Committee, she championed rules to promote conflict resolution through mediation as an alternative to litigation. Nancy's upcoming how-to book, The Malnourished Marriage, talks about 5 essential emotional nutrients for a healthy relationship. And it's a conflict resolution buffet of food for thought to help couples bilge a diet of discontent and feed their hunger for love. Nancy's novel, Around Which All Things Bend, is a story about relationships and how far we're willing to bend for love. So, excuse me, Nancy, welcome to the program. I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, great. So let me ask you, if I remember, I usually ask this question of my guests, what's the most important thing you've done today?
I think the most important thing I've done is talk to my grandson before he went to school.
Okay.
He's having some challenges.
So what kind of challenges is he having?
His parents are going through a divorce.
So you're getting some firsthand information there.
Yes, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience talking to children whose parents are going through divorce and counseling them.
Yeah. So how old is your grandson?
14.
Okay, so he's totally aware of everything that's going on.
Yes, but children, no matter how many disagreements there may be, they always want their family to be together, despite anything. I've handled children who have been verbally, physically, sexually abused in other forums, not in divorce, but representing them, to the court in, foster cases. They always want their parents regardless. So
that's interesting, because even if they're in an abusive relationship, they still want their parents. That's what
yes,
you're telling me. Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah. So
they get a mindset where they truly do, and unfortunately, it sticks with them the rest of their life unless they get a lot of counseling. That somehow they caused it, and they feel very guilty about the break between in their relationship with their father or mother.
And I assume that they're more often than they're actually more prone to get into relationships that are abusive to them. Absolutely.
Abusive, dysfunctional, a lot of addictions, suicide, self-sabotage, self-cutting, all kinds of very, very sad things happen to children who, when they're not really raised with the appropriate skills to deal with life and to deal with conflict and confrontation and resolve disputes, it carries on into every relationship that you're going to have. And that goes for all of us. Yeah. Our first way that we learn how to resolve disputes is in our family of origin. And if our family of origin was a situation where it was just yelling and screaming and there was never any resolution, that's how you're going to go into the world. That's how you're going to go into a relationship.
Sure.
And, I've seen time and time again, clients who come to me for their first divorce, you ask them what the problem is, because you have to do a clinical intake, find out what are the issues in the marriage, because without knowing that, you're not going to know what the issues in the divorce are. Every divorce takes on the personality of the marriage.
Sure.
So I have found in my experience, albeit anecdotal, although now it's really supported by the research, that if you can't learn how to resolve disputes, if you can't learn how to communicate and listen as a child in your family of origin, that is going to follow you into every relationship you have, whether it's a friendship, business, or marital relationship. And and if they don't deal with that, then they come back for their second divorce.
Yeah.
I represented one gentleman in 3 divorces.
Wow.
And I finally said to him, has it ever dawned on you that you make a great date, but you suck as a husband?
Well, wherever you go, there you are, as the saying goes.
Exactly.
So, so if you're out of one relationship, the tendency is to blame the other person in the relationship, but that relationship did not fail just because of one side. And you talk about the importance of early relationships. So one of the things that, and you may not be aware of this, Nancy, but when guys have a cigar and a couple of drinks, their IQ goes up by 20 or 30 points. It really does. It really does. Now, unfortunately, it's just transitory, but it does go up significantly, 20 or 30 points, maybe even more in some cases, especially if you have like more to drink. Then you're like Einstein level. But one of the things that we discussed, a few of us who were, this is when I was still single, and I was single for a long time. I didn't get married till I was 40. And one of the things that we discussed was we were talking about women and women that we've dated. And we came to the conclusion that a woman who has a good relationship with her father is more likely than not to have a good relationship with other men. And the vice versa was true. And even if it was legitimate, and I actually counseled a young man once that he had a girlfriend, and she was always talking about not trusting him. And I asked him, like, that's pretty direct and forward. And I said, it was, and I said, well, tell me about her father's relationship with her mother. And she said, oh, he cheated on her all and blah, 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 blah.
There
And
you
so,
go.
yeah, there you go. And it's a hard thing. And that would be a totally legitimate reason not to like your father. But it doesn't matter, because it sets the
Exactly.
tone for the male-female relationships that you're going to have in the future, because you come from a subconscious level of not trusting a male.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And the interesting thing is, and as I said, you know, I'm very, very interested in neuroscience, where, you know, my first foray into that was as a nurse. And I've really studied the neuroscience of relationships over the last 30 years, because, you know, I'm confounded by some of the things that I've seen. And traditionally, a male will act in a marital relationship the way his father acted in that relationship. If he may not be aware of it, but that's what he learned to model.
Right.
And if his father cheated 9 times out of 10, that's going to be his way of releasing anxiety or looking for what he feels or thinks is missing in his relationship. And I'm telling you, not only the research, but the divorce statistics bear this out, and the second marriage and third marriage. I mean, some men shouldn't get married.
Yeah. Well, you know, unless they decided they're going to work on themselves.
Oh, yes.
I think that's the whole thing is, you know, you're going to bring the same person, and actually you're going to find, if you get divorced, you are going to be the same person that you come into that second marriage, and you're going to find the same person that you married the first time around. Now they may have a different name, but they're going to be the same person. And
Exactly.
So, yeah, and so you're just bound to repeat it and repeat it. I mean, I mean, you know, at this point, I can't, you know, I'm way beyond it. At 70, I'm way beyond being able to blame my parents for anything. But I very, very much did not want to be my father. And it took me a long time to work on that, because there are many things that I really did not want to emulate and that he did. Actually, there's a few things that I think I actually wanted to emulate. I can't think of one right off the top of my head. But it was, you know, it takes a very conscious effort to do that. And I knew that I do that. My wife actually laughs. She goes like, having met your family, it's amazing that you're normal.
Well, I was going to ask you, you seem to have a lot of insight into this, you know, this whole conundrum of emotional, intellectual, social ingredients that go in to make a relationship. And I was wondering, is it because I know that you coach people? Was this just self-awareness, which, you know, how did you get this insight that you have?
A lot of it goes back to a motivation to not be that person that my father was, and not to have my parents had a horrible relationship. I mean, it was like in the 8th grade, I remember I went to parochial school, and they were arguing like day and night. I mean, and like really arguing, like yelling at each other for about over a year. And I remember I was at the school, I sat there, and I started to talk to the nuns, and it just spilled out, you know, what was going on. And next thing I know, that, you know, I was being shipped off to live with my aunt in Ohio while they got their shit together. So it was that bad.
Did you return?
Yeah, I returned to high school, and they kind of got their shit together. Not great, but, you know, everything. But part of it also is that, and I talk about this in my coaching program, about how immature I was for the longest time, even as a young adult. I was actually terribly immature. I was engaged several times. I wasn't married. I got married. I was divorced several times, but I was engaged several times. And so,
well, how did you know you were not ready for marriage? How did you know?
I didn't know
you
that.
got engaged, but you broke it off.
I didn't know that. That implies a level of consciousness that I did not have. I just knew that I just didn't want to be, and I wasn't, for some reason, I wasn't ready. And it was interesting because the last woman who I was engaged to, and I never got engaged to my wife because she knew about my history, and we never got engaged. But the last woman I was engaged to, she was a very, very bright. She was a physician, and she was actually the youngest physician ever hired at the Mayo Clinic. She was off the charts bright. And so we were engaged for a while, and then we went to pre-engagement counseling. It was her idea. And what happened was that at the very beginning, it only took like 3 or 4 sessions for the psychologist to say, like, you guys should not be engaged. You should not be engaged. You should not be married. You should not be engaged. And and guys do this. And I said it, and I thought I was true. But when I look back upon it, or I thought I was okay. So the thing is, Nancy, I'm sure you've heard this. It's not you, it's me.
Right,
and,
exactly.
And guys, when guys say that, often they're
They don't
lying.
mean.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're liars. They're like, come on, let's not be nice that they don't mean it. No, they're liars. And
Well, do you remember?
I remember, but now that I look back, but that was actually true, even though I was lying. It was actually you can lie with the truth, because I was lying to myself because it was me, but I was pretending that I was trying to make him feel better. That blah blah blah, all that thing. Yeah, but it was me. And so it was an evolutionary process. Certain things. I had a couple of major events in my life in my in my late 30s that really forced me to grow up in a way that basically I got slapped around pretty bad. But out of that came the boy that was in a man's body turned into a man.
Well, do you remember any of the hard questions that the prenuptial counselor asked you for you to sort of?
That was over 30 years ago. I mean, I've been
because
I don't remember, but I just it was interesting because we did the first session we did together, or maybe the first couple, and then we went separately. But it was, like I said, I don't remember what it was, but it was interesting.
Well, the debut novel that I just published, Around Which All Things Bend, is exactly the story about what you're relating. Mm-hmm. A young man, very wealthy man, is engaged and breaks off the engagement. And the story follows his, evolution as to his understanding of what it's like to have a real solid relationship. Mm-hmm. And I recently wrote a blog about the hard questions you should ask when you're engaged, because millennials are actually breaking engagements at a higher rate that was ever, known really? Previously. Well, I mean, you're 70, I'm 75. And when my ex-husband proposed to me, I mean, the feeling was then, if he could afford to give you a center hall 2-story colonial and was going to make a good living and came from a good family, that was a good catch, right? Right. We didn't think about romance and love and sex. We just thought about the status of marriage, not really what it meant. And so now the millennials are really setting the stage for, I think, maybe stronger relationships. And there are the three F's that you have to discuss before you get married, whether it's your first marriage or second marriage or third marriage. I think, we previously discussed the fact that the statistics are now that people who are over the age of 50 are twice as likely to get divorced. Those over 65 are 3 times more likely to get divorced. And regardless of how many times you've been married, if you're thinking about remarrying, you've got to ask questions, the hard questions, to see if you're compatible, just like you just said you did.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
The 3 F's for sex are feelings. In other words, what are you really feeling? To you, what is sex? In other words, is sex something that's just going to happen naturally? Is sex something that we are going to have to work on? We're going to have adventure. We're going to have risk. What is it? And that really needs to be discussed. The second one is frequency. How often are you expecting to have it? I mean, really, you have to have these discussions. And then the third one is fantasy. And you have to discuss what each other's fantasies are in order to have a really fulfilling sexual relationship at any age, but particularly when you get older.
Sure.
Because most of my clients, who we call them the gray or silver divorces that came in, the reason why they were leaving their relationship was because they're like facing the mortality and they want to have a vivid and vibrant sex life. And if the partner isn't interested in that, then that's really a no-go at that stage of life.
Yeah. Well, I think those are important things to discuss, especially if you're going around the second time around or third time around. At the same time, guys, and I'm looking at this from a guy's perspective, guys stop being interesting. Guys stop being flirtatious. Guys stop being the bad boy, which women love. And so I think that, if I was to, and I go into this in my coaching program, is that shit, you got to put some fun back into it.
Exactly.
I mean that, a penis and vagina without any fun is that's just vaginal masturbation. That's all that is. Thank you. Thank me for letting me use your vagina for a few minutes, and we're done. It's really it's a hollow event, and I think that a lot of intimacy issues, a lot of problems that couples have could be solved by being more flirtatious in a lot of different ways. Now, if you're in a no-sex marriage, which technically is sex twice a year or less, then that flirtatiousness is going to have to incrementally increase. Don't expect to be flirtatious. Don't expect to go in the kitchen and grab your wife's ass and she's going to respond to you in a good way. That's not going to happen. But there are things that you can do to put some, I want to say, to build that relationship over time, to where you do have that rekindled relationship. And so I think that from a guy standpoint, that's really the biggest thing. They stop being flirtatious. They actually stop being a man in the relationship. And women want men.
Absolutely.
Unless you're a lesbian, but that's a whole different ballgame. But in general, women want men. And that doesn't mean like being, you don't have to, it's not like being a buff Navy SEAL or whatever. I'd love to be that, but I'm not. But they want somebody who's a man, who's a gentleman, who's also a little bit of a bad boy. All those things combined and roll into one that makes someone excited to be in a relationship with you.
Absolutely. It's interesting. As I said, you do have a good insight. About 60%, according to the AARP, 60% of the divorces that are filed over the age of 40 are filed by women. Right. And one of the reasons is that they feel very much like you just discussed, that they're just, a receptacle. That's all then they want more. And, as I said, these are, talking about the questions you should, or, the issues you should discuss. My experience, and I have 3 brothers, but I've been married twice. Guys don't necessarily want to talk about it. I mean, So it's very hard, to really get that mojo going again.
Sure. Oh, it takes effort, and again, it's what I coach is incremental steps, depending on where you are. If you got a good relationship, well, it's going to go fast. But if you got a crappy relationship, it's going to go slow. It's going to be slow, and you're going to have to put in deposits without expecting any return for a while.
How many of your coaching clients really? What kind of a time frame do they hang in there for a year? Do they hang in there for 2 years, or did they sort of say to themselves, "This is sort of a test"?
The question is, are you committed to the result? Okay, so a time frame is an artificial situation. I believe. Are you committed to the result? And are you willing to incrementally support changes that you see by the incremental things that you do? But the time frame is like, are you committed to the relationship? Yes or no? It's very simple. Are you committed? Yes or no? If it's yes, great. If it's no, that's fine. But don't start at me with maybes. Okay. Maybes is the land of indecision. And so like the question is, are you committed to the relationship? And if you're not, you know what? That's fine. Then move on. And if you are, we'll start acting like it. Start acting like this is the person that you want to basically ride till you die. So it's kind of like, are you committed to that person? And then the time frame is, and you're doing a lot of it not with the expectation of getting anything, but you're actually doing it to improve the quality of your relationship with your significant other. And that's the other thing I coach is stop saying I want more sex. That is the surest way to not getting more sex. It's like, or if you get that mercy sex, it's going to be not particularly good. You're going to have like just a very passive lover, and it's just going to be, it really is just going to be vaginal masturbation at that point.
Do you ever recommend like the couple to do new things to generate that, like adventure and risk?
There's a book I recommend. Sometimes it's called the Adventure Challenge. And I don't know if you ever, it's a great book. It's actually dates for couples, things to do. We've done several of them. My wife and I have done several of them. We don't do them as much as we should, as much as I'd like to, just for some reason, I don't know why. But one of them was to bake a cake. One person is blindfolded, and the other person has to direct you, but the one who's not blindfolded has to direct you, but they can't talk. Okay, that's kind of that's a fun thing to do. The other one was to go to a bookstore, pick a cooking book, and then walk up to a complete stranger and ask them to pick a main course for you out of the cookbook. Okay, so there's lots of ideas like that, and they tell you whether it's a nighttime activity, daytime activity, it's in-house or out-house, out of the house or whatever. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I love that lyric. I can't remember who the singer was. When was the last time that you did something for the first time? And so it's you got to bring life into it. But I want to kind of go back and kind of talk a little bit about divorce that happens in olders. So I was a little bit surprised by the statistic they told me about the high rates of divorce among. I wasn't surprised about the 40 and 50-year-olds. Okay, I was surprised about the 65-year-olds. And that seems to be like two different groups. And am I mistaken, or are there predominantly different reasons why people in their 40s and 50s get divorced, and why people age 65 and older get divorced?
The research is that people over 50 and also over 65 are baby boomers. and they got divorced early in their adulthood. And this is usually a second marriage. And the statistics for a second marriage are 60% of second marriages fail, 70% of third marriages fail.
Wow.
So the issues with respect to that are the 50-year-olds are still working. They're still focused on a job, finances, perhaps getting ahead, and don't want to rock the boat as much. So that's the 60%. The triple is that they're retired. Now somebody's home 24/7. And, you know, what you're trying to decide at that point in your life when you're 65 is, do you really want to live like this the rest of your life if you don't see it improving? Like, I understand what you're saying about everything you've counseled, but sometimes people are just so tired of being dissatisfied that they're really not, they're just not game on in trying to prolong this, and then they bail. And, you know, that's really, as I said, the reason. Now, with respect to women filing for divorce, women are far more independent now. There's no stigma to it. So if a woman leaves a marriage, it's not as it used to be, where, you know, no one could believe she would leave a marriage. You know, this guy's a good provider, or, you know, I thought they had a good marriage. So, you know, it's really sort of complicated, but the reality is that because there are so many divorces between the ages of 40 and 50, for the first time, it's really the second and third marriages that are breaking up. And that's what's motivating the statistics.
Yeah. I think a lot of times also that at that point, the kids are leaving the house and the people are not used to being by themselves. And that's when all the flaws in the relationship are exposed, because you know, they're not busy going to sporting events with their kids or concerts or whatever, or driving them around. They don't have that extra, the extra people in the house. And now you're kind of faced like, okay, how do you deal with being an empty nester?
Well, I think children are really a buffer to divorce at certain stages. My experience is that they're not the buffer they used to be.
Okay.
You know, people are more, you know, the traditional marriage was an economic arrangement, as I said. Can you give me a center hall 2-story colonial? Can you give me a good life? And now it's all based upon love. And the American marriage has never been in so much peril in terms of it totally depends on the happiness of the couple, right? Whether the couple is happy or not. Right. It's far more a romantic arrangement. It's far more of, I need to be fulfilled. It's not as much of a joint venture, you know, back to back, shoulder to shoulder as it used to be. And that's just, you know, social, you know, society, cultural norms are changing. And, you know, people, there's no stigma associated with divorce as there used to be.
Yeah.
And so many older men who are getting divorced have decided they did their duty. They stayed with this woman. They put the kids through school. They did what they could, but now it's their turn. And that's basically what you hear. At least that's what I heard a lot of.
Yeah. I think, you know, what you talked about, how people used to have themselves, each other and stay together in the past. And I think that one of the things is that that for couples, depending on how busy they are, I'm very busy right now. I'm actually, my wife said she's never seen me work so hard. And my wife works for, my wife is, she does a merger and acquisitions. She says companies anywhere from 5 million to 150 million. She's kind of in that space. And so she's also, you know, and one of the things we've talked about is that there are times where I'm primary. There are times when she's primary, and there's times that we're primary as a couple. And we have to be aware of that. I mean, she's in the, you know, towards the end when millions of dollars are exchanging hands, deals get crazy. I mean, they
I'm sure.
Right up until the time that the deal is done, it's just a very tense and consuming environment. And that's when I have to I have to be the supportive husband. And there are other times that she's the supportive wife. It's not that we're second class citizens. It's just like, this is the time, this is her time, this is my time, and this is our time.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2, share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3, leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.